Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central and another Omened by HP video. Proud sponsors of the Overwatch League and of course PC providers as you've seen on screen. Some of my favourite Overwatch Central videos to make are looking at new compositions. Stuff like Dotes Comp, which was Dive Goats, the Clockwork Vendetta composition, stuff like Hackfist, and the lesser known stuff such as Boss Comp, which was Bastion and Risa Symmetra. In this video, we're going to be looking at loads of new compositions that are coming into the game, especially as the meta is shifting away from Goats Comp in the pro scene. Now we know that this wasn't due to a specific patch, but a number of different things, and not to mention that we have the McCree buff coming in soon and the D.Va nerf for the pro scene, so that just makes things even more crazy with that on the horizon. But we're going to be looking at some of the new compositions that are coming in to try and take the traditional free Goats' place as the true meta in a Game of Thrones style. Before that though, I really wanted to highlight the pick rates, biggest winners and losers I suppose, of the pro scene, as pick rates have been dropping and rising pretty substantially. To sort of show my point that Goats Comp in its traditional form at least is dropping in popularity. Just to be clear, when I mention Goats Comp in this video, I mean the traditional sense of Reinhardt, Zarya D.Va, Brigitte, Zenyatta, Lucio. The biggest loser over the past week has been Zenyatta, with his pick rate dropping 30%. Then we have Zarya dropping 22%, Reinhardt dropping 19%, D.Va dropping 18%, Brigitte dropping 14%, and Lucio dropping 10%. The only heroes that have dropped popularity this week are those heroes that are used in that composition. Now let's look at the biggest risers, with Ana going up by 30% pick rate, Sombra 20%, Pharah 11%, Mercy 10%, Wrecking Ball 6%, Widowmaker 9%. All sorts of different heroes going up in popularity. And looking at some of the games this past week at least, we can see some of the new compositions that are being used and sort of highlight where and why they're so popular. Going from the most impactful and the most meta to some of the more unorthodox strategies that were used. The first one that I really wanted to highlight doesn't deviate too much from traditional Goats Comp, but it is Sombra Goats. Sombra's pick rate has skyrocketed, and it all comes from the Houston versus San Francisco Shock game that we've highlighted quite a few times. It was a game where Houston's, as the major underdogs in this game, managed to get a Shock win against the Shock. They did this through Dante's use of Sombra, and in some cases it wasn't even close. Houston just seemed to outplay Shock, and Shock, playing the normal traditional Goats, wasn't sure how to really play against Sombra in this fashion. To quote pro player for the Astro, he sort of summed it up best: Houston broke Overwatch. They beat Shock, which was one of the best Goats teams in the game, with non-Goats, so now nobody is playing Goats. Swapping out the D.Va in Goats composition for Sombra has done wonders for some teams, especially LA Valiant that managed to beat Vancouver Titans the other day, which was probably the biggest Shock win. Vancouver Titans haven't lost a game in the Overwatch League at all up until then. And LA Valiant, who have been struggling the past few stages, looked really good playing it and playing all sorts of different compositions. We've spoken how Zenyatta's pick rate dropped in a previous video, but it boils down to Sombra being a lot better against Zenyatta. You can harass him more, using EMP completely diminishes his shield health, and he can't Transcendence. So a lot of teams are switching the Zenyatta out for an Ana, which is why her pick rate's gone up quite a lot, and why Zenyatta's has dropped substantially too. So does that mean that Goats Comp has basically just been swapped out for the Sombra iteration? The answer there is no. Because of this big shift, lots of different compositions are being used. And we're now getting into a really good space of when certain compositions are used on certain maps or in certain situations, as opposed to just Goats all of the time, which is the healthiest meta to be in. So now we're going to go over some of the more niche strategies that are still very powerful and very popular, definitely worth trying out at home if you get the chance. The first composition that I wanted to highlight in this fashion is Bunker Comp. Not because it's the most popular actually, it's one of the first names on the sheet, but its pick rate hasn't risen a huge amount. No doubt it's the composition that most are expecting to replace Goats Comp in this kind of meta. Oh, if Goats gets nerfed, then we're just going to be playing Orisa, Junkrat, Baptiste. It's not really happened. It's much like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. It sort of subverted expectations and being sent back to the wall. Bunker Comp is being played in this situation is a firm example of where bunker comp is very good, but in the pro scene at least, it's not really picking up in popularity by a huge amount. Heroes like Orisa have, but in various different situations that we'll highlight in a second, but it's certainly more meta in competitive ladder, as it's a lot easier to play and doesn't really require the communication. In the pro scene though, you can see Mayhem here, whilst they do manage to keep the point, they are struggling a little bit to sort of keep their composure. It's not as straightforward as you'd think, even on Paris defense, right? So I did want to highlight bunker comp rather early on in this video to say, yeah, it's popular, but not as popular as you may have thought. The next composition I wanted to highlight is multi-DPS. This is basically when you drop one of the tanks, no doubt the D.Va in your lineup, for another DPS. And this composition can involve a combination of different DPS heroes. Widowmaker, Junkrat, Pharah, Hanzo, Ashe has been used a little bit, Sombra, Doomfist, Tracer, Genji, any DPS really, with the main tank player going to something like Winston, or Orisa, or Hammond. Depends on the situation really, but multiple DPS compositions aren't mutually exclusive to other comps. You can still run stuff like Bunker as triple DPS, and also some of these other compositions that I'm going to highlight. But first, why does multi-DPS work? Well, for the most part when you're playing stuff like Pharah or a Widowmaker, it's all about creating crossfires, especially if the enemy team, like I'm showing you on screen, is running goats. You can see Houston Outlaws here, so I've just taken over the whole of the Ruins map for themselves and putting this goats comp into this small room, just putting out a lot of damage. But like I said, this composition isn't mutually exclusive to other comps that are used. Another one I wanted to highlight, which you are seeing in this gameplay too, is Hackfist. We haven't really spoken about Hackfist too much on the channel, but it is a composition that is rising in popularity, something that we may talk about again sometime soon. It essentially includes a Sombra and a Doomfist, two heroes that are very good at dismantling a goats composition where there's just a lot of tanks, a lot of sustain, everybody stood together. The Sombra can EMP, the Doomfist is just really good at knocking about tanks and being a brawly disruptor. Here's another example of it being used on screen, and it's really good at tearing up tankier compositions. Traditionally this is ran with Reinhardt, Zarya, Sombra, Doomfist. You can change the main tanks to Winston D.Va, but like I said, there's no strict way of playing it so long as you have the Sombra and the Doomfist. This was used a little bit a while ago before Doomfist was nerfed, because it was still really good against goats. It was called anti-goats back then, but now it's got its own name as Hackfist, and its popularity is going up. Sombra's, of course, has skyrocketed, Doomfist not so much, but Doomfist is still being used quite a lot in the pro scene, especially for the kind of hero that he is. So certainly a composition to be aware of, and if you see it on screen, you can point at it and go, oh yeah, that's Hackfist, I played Hackfist, and you sound really smart and clever. Another composition that kind of comes under the multi-DPS lineup, or more of a traditional 2-2-2, is Double Sniper. We've spoken about this quite a lot. It usually includes an Orisa, but of course the DPS are Widowmaker and Hanzo. This is still quite niche, it's not massively popular at the moment. Both Widowmaker and Hanzo's pick rate has gone up, but not by a huge amount. This is typically only really used on points like the first area of Watchpoint Gibraltar, just because of the area that you can control, the information and the pressure that you can put on the attacking team. We've gone over this composition quite a lot in the past, so I don't really need to explain it too much, but the last two, this is where it gets very exciting. Clockwork Vendetta created this composition that you are seeing on screen with the LA Valiant running it. It includes an Orisa, it includes a Roadhog, a Mei, a Torbjorn, and usually an Ana, and then a Mercy or a Lucio depending on how your team is feeling. We've even seen the actual team Clockwork Vendetta bring out a Widowmaker just to make it triple DPS. It's like this weird concoction of bunker comp mixed in with heroes like Mei and Torbjorn who are really good at taking space. If you want to know a little bit more about this composition, there is a link on screen to check out that video. But this is the first time the pros in the Overwatch League have ran this composition, and they ran it terribly. Valiant ended up losing the point, and you see how it all fell apart for this team. But it is interesting to see that some pro players are really taking stock of this new composition that is primarily made of one tricks. In the actual Clockwork Vendetta team, Valiant haven't got the same experience on these heroes, and are really suffering because of it. But I really did want to highlight that some pros are playing this composition, as bizarre as it seems. And whilst it didn't really end well for LA Valiant, I do suspect that more teams will try it and some will even succeed with how it works. Just might take a while. And finally, this isn't really a real composition, but it was certainly very odd coming out with the Florida Mayhem. They ran Quick Play Comp, which can only be described as 5 DPS. Soldier 76, Junkrat, Pharah, Mei and Sombra. Good portion of those heroes want to fight from a distance, but Sombra and Mei are just going to be really annoying. Mei is exceptionally good on this point of Nepal, the village, because the walls are really good at shutting off the point, getting people stuck in there, and nobody can hear you scream if you're stuck in those little rooms. So Mei is a really good pick here, and Mayhem did do a good job to be able to take the point for as long as they did, but eventually they did swap up and change to goats. But I certainly wanted to highlight, as not only is it a very weird composition, it ended up working for a little bit, which was very surprising. Having multiple DPSs we've highlighted, being able to hit targets from various angles, distances where goats can't reach you, is a firm example of why this composition, as weird as it did, worked for a short time. There are of course hundreds of different compositions, but they all seem to fall under these umbrellas at least. You have stuff like Winston goats with the Winston instead of the Reinhardt. Quad tank was used by Paris Eternal, but that was only once. But those are just a few compositions that are trying to come into the fray now that the traditional goats comp isn't as popular as it once was. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks again to Omen by HP for helping support this video. The Omen Esports report is coming back this week, so be sure not to miss it. They have a really cool studio, and it was a lot of fun to be on it last year. Thanks for watching guys, take care, and I'll see you soon.